Thank you, Ray, and thank you, the new MR team, for having me here today. So what I want to do during this presentation is I want to talk you through what it means to conduct successful online communities. And the idea of this webinar is to really start from scratch, start from the beginning, understand the benefits of using this method, and then go through some of the more practical aspects that you need to consider to make it work. I find that sometimes, no matter how much experience one has with running communities, there's always a benefit in going back to the basics. So let's begin. So, what are online communities and why should we use them? So we have here a very simple definition that we always use when we present this method to our clients. So an online community is a qualitative platform for engaging with people and engineering discussion and collaboration. Research participants are just a click away, ready and willing to share opinions and co-create. So just to give you an idea, we're talking about a platform that works on a wide variety of devices and that replicates other social media platforms such as Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. So platforms that users are already familiar with. So when they take part in an online community, they don't really have to engage in completely new behaviors. They just have to replicate behaviors that they're already engaging in on other platforms. And you have here a few screenshots from the platform that we use at Mustard Research. Now, an online community is a very dynamic platform, and you can use it to engage with participants through individual tasks. You can probe on their views, on their experiences. You can get them to share photos or share any sort of visual material that's relevant to your research topic. But you can also engage with them in a group discussion where you can benefit from more of a group dynamic that you wouldn't necessarily get in a one-to-one conversation. Now, there are multiple benefits to using online communities. First of all, this approach ensures that we maximize the time that we have with each participant. If you think of an online community running for 2 weeks with 10 people, we'd expect to have approximately 1.5 to 2 hours across the consultation period from each participant. And this amount of time gives us a deeper understanding of the participants and how they live their lives, which wouldn't be possible within the confines of a focus group. An online community is also a cost-efficient way to reach people that are difficult to reach otherwise. So say that you're based in Manchester and are conducting research at a national or international level, an online community is the best way to get all the right people in one place. You can have 5 people or you can have 1,000. There really is no limit. It can also allow the participants to give us responses in a more considered way, generally providing a more thorough and accurate response. They'll have longer to source the evidence and examples that will then allow us to understand how they live their lives. An online community also allows us to use different creative techniques that will then help unlock people's emotions and gives us access to more raw and unfiltered reactions. And linked to this, they can also share visual materials that will then help us bring the research to life. From a moderation point of view, an online community approach ensures that we can be more considered and collaborative in our moderation. So rather than reacting in the moment during a focus group, we can easily adjust our approach to maximize the effectiveness of the discussions. And an online community also allows us to be flexible and change our approach along the way if we feel like we need to. Now, beyond the research benefits that you get from an online community, you also gain access to high-quality data. To get this, respondent engagement is key. Because of the extended consultation time that you have with each person, this allows you as a moderator to build trust with them and get personal. And that's especially important with more sensitive topics when you need time to build rapport and get people to open up. In an online community, you can have both group discussions as well as one-to-one discussions that gives you the opportunity to explore more sensitive topics in greater detail in a one-to-one setting. Another benefit of this method that has a direct impact on respondent engagement is that it allows research participants to respond to questions in their own time from the comfort of their own home or whenever or wherever they feel like it, whether it's at home or during their commute when they use their mobile phones. When using an online community, participants don't have to travel anywhere. We as researchers go to them rather than asking them to come to us. And this gives us access to their lives as they are and not in an artificial setting. So running an online community can be an enriching experience for both research participants and moderators. We have here a couple of quotes from an online community that was all about music streaming habits, and at the end, both participants and local moderators got in touch with us to share some final thoughts of their experience, and you can see here how positive they were about what they had to do and having the opportunity to share their thoughts and experiences with us. Right, so now that we've discussed all the benefits, let's get down to the practical matters to see what we need to do to get to this exciting and enriching experience. So first and foremost, you need the right people. Your research participants will depend on the type of research that you're conducting. As a market research agency, the way we recruit people for online communities is not massively different from how we'd recruit them for any other qualitative project. But there are some specifics that we need to take into account. Most of the times we'd partner up with a recruitment partner, and the type of partner that they are will depend on the type of projects that we're running and the budgets that we have available. If budgets are low, and you're after a lot of people, then it's probably more advisable to go through a panel provider. However, if your topic is more exploratory and you have a more generous budget, then it's advisable to work with a qualitative recruitment agency. Now, for them to be able to recruit the right people, we need to give them a recruitment screener, which is essentially designed like a short questionnaire with some very specific components. First of all, you need to have a very clear introduction. People need to know what they're getting themselves into, how long it will take, and what they'll get as a reward. And I'll show you an example of this in just a bit. Your introduction is then followed by questions around all the profiling criteria that you're after, from age, gender, family status, to some of the more specific aspects that you need to cover in your project. And finally, and very importantly, you need to make sure that you get people that are engaged and that contribute. Well, you can certainly make sure of this with your topic and the research methods that you use. You also need to consider this aspect at the point of recruitment. And for this, we like to include some creative questions and select people based on their responses. And I'll show you an example of this too. So we have here an introduction from a project that we've conducted recently. And the introduction needs to have several hooks. And the first one is related to the actual research. As you can see from the text highlighted in green, participants need to know what you want to find out and why. If you're after engaged participants, you need to make sure that they're committed to the topic, so it's important to present this in a manner that resonates with them. Personally, I think it's extremely important to give potential participants as much information as possible about how important their contributions are and what will actually happen with their contributions, as that will lead to more engaged responses from them. They also need to know what is expected of them, and you can see that from the text highlighted in blue. So you need to provide a clear explanation on how online communities work and how participants are expected to contribute. Remember, although we as researchers are familiar with this method, it's not something that many people have heard of, so you need to be clear when explaining things to them. The other hook is more practical, and that's the financial aspect, which we have in orange here on the slide. Because before participants are engaged, they need to be drawn in with this financial reward, because at the end of the day, it's their time that they're giving. And finally, it's also important to let everyone know the code of conduct that we abide by and how their personal data will be handled. And that's particularly important when we work with lists from our clients. Now, I mentioned earlier the importance of creative questions too. So an example of this would be, if you had to choose 3 items from your fridge that best matched your personality, which would they be and why? So we used this question for an online community that was all about ketchup, and we made the creative question food related. And these types of questions are really useful because they allow us to only choose those participants that are more expressive and articulate. Another important aspect to consider is around the incentives and prizes that you're offering. And there are a few questions that you need to ask yourself here. First of all, is your project national or global? This can have a huge impact on the time spent on administering these incentives. For example, you might have a more streamlined way of doing it in the country where you're based, but have you factored in enough time when doing it internationally? Shop vouchers, bank transfers, or checks through the post might work when you have a small number of participants from the same country where you are based, but that can turn into a complete nightmare if you've done an online community covering 4 different markets. I've recently learned the hard way, having to process hundreds of individual PayPal transfers because we didn't spend enough time at the planning stage um, to really plan what we were going to do about the incentives. So my biggest learning so far, and something that I want to share with you, is try and streamline this process as much as possible, as early as possible in the planning stage. Amazon vouchers, for example, work really well. You can do them in bulk. You can just copy a load of email addresses, but bear in mind that they don't work in every country. If that doesn't work, PayPal is a good option as well, but be careful that you can only process mass payments if you have a business account, and you need to set that up quite early. So it's things that you need to consider because streamlining this can really save you a lot of time further down the line. So when it comes to designing the discussion guide, there are some aspects that should be taken into account too. First of all, keep it simple and snappy. When they get onto the platform, participants see the questions displayed as a form that they need to fill in. It's important not to have too many questions here because many of them will be left unanswered. So focus on the most important ones and leave the rest as probes that you would use when you moderate. Like with any qualitative project, but particularly important with online communities, avoid yes or no questions because some participants won't get into the detail that you need. If you're only asking the most important questions up front, then allow yourself plenty of probes that you can use in your moderation and that will enable you to adapt to each person's response. And I'll show you an example of this in just a bit. Now, the first topic in your discussion guide should always be the introduction. And this is super important because it sets the scene for what's to come and it really helps participants feel at ease and comfortable. An online community also gives you the best opportunity to set challenges. You can send people on missions, you can tell them to share with you visual materials related to your research topic, and really you can be as bold as you want with your challenges. We've recently conducted an online community that was all about music streaming behaviors, and we've successfully used the withdrawal technique where we asked people to not stream music for a day to see their emotional reactions. And we also asked them to to document everything in a diary. And it really worked wonders, and that's something that you can't really get if you were to use a focus group or to do a depth interview. And be bold not only with your challenges, but also with the features and tools that your platform allows you to use. Some examples now. This is an example of an introduction topic. So just like the introduction in a focus group, this is very important and it can set the tone for how people respond and how engaged they are in the community. It's an opportunity for you as a moderator to make them feel comfortable and at ease, no matter the topic you'll be focusing on later. As I said before, it's really important to get this discussion fully moderated. No participants should be left without being welcomed on the community. In some of our projects, it happened naturally that people started sharing photos with us together with their introduction. And it's good because these communities are created to replicate social media sites. It just comes naturally to people. And the benefit of that is that they're more authentic and engaged when they answer your questions. This is an example of one topic that we had in a project focusing on stop smoking campaigns. You've already seen the introduction from that. And I have to admit that on this particular occasion, the participants had to answer quite a few questions in one go. But it's important to see here that as a moderator, you'd have additional questions up your sleeve to further probe people on. If you notice that your participants haven't answered the most important questions, so those on the left, feel free to probe on them further. But if not, the further probes allow you to continue a discussion in a more personalized way that will make participants feel that they're heard. To make things engaging, depending on the platform you're using and its technical capabilities, you can use various features or tools. For example, you can ask participants to keep online diaries where they record specific activities. You can get them to create mood boards, to upload imagery, to create pin boards or heat maps to highlight what they like or what they dislike about what you're showing them. And as you're doing this and as you're engaging in all sorts of creative exercises, your clients can have a viewer access to the community. They can't moderate themselves, but as you can see in the bottom right corner, they can leave comments for you as a moderator asking you to further probe on specific things. A few more examples here. You can create one-to-one or group discussions with your participants. If you're covering more sensitive topics, then you can mark those as private. You can create boards or for ideation where participants can review concepts, where they can vote, they can rank, and so on. So there's plenty of opportunities for you to use from a creative and playful point of view. And a final example here, this is a heat map where you can show participants a specific type of stimulus, whether it's product packaging, advert, poster, invoice, anything really. And as they review that stimulus, they can tell you what they like and what they disliked about it. There's really loads of this kind of creative exercises that you can choose from. Just don't go too overboard with it. Now, a few tips on moderation. When you're moderating an online community, it's important to become the invisible friend of your participants. Communities give you the time to build a relationship and have that conversational rapport with respondents. So don't be afraid to be friendly, to use informal language and even the odd emoji when appropriate. Speak the language of your research participants, not the language that you would use with your clients. And don't be afraid to deviate from your discussion guide because it's called a guide for a reason. And the beauty of the online community is that it's long enough for you to go back to probe further if you feel that you're not getting enough. But at the same time, as long as you're covering the important areas, you can free yourself to go where your intuition guides you. And this will help keep a good conversational flow going. And it also means that you can use your researcher intuition and ask any follow-up questions that you like. You'll often find that respondents give us nuggets of information and they open avenues that we may not have even considered when we wrote the guide. So engaged participants, creative techniques, and good moderators will together generate an incredible amount of data. Just to put this into numbers, at the end of a 4 weeks online community with 90 people, these were the numbers that we were talking about. So over 600 pages of community word export, more than 200 hours of consultation time, around 2 hours and a quarter with each respondent engaged on the community. So a lot of data to work with. The beauty though when you're doing an online community is that the data is there ready for you to use and start your analysis. You don't have to wait for transcripts to come in. You don't have to translate the data because the online community has a feature that automatically translates the responses. It gives you exports in Word and in Excel the moment those comments are inputted on the online community. So there's no waiting time, and there's also cost savings attached to it. So at the end, it's really the data is ready, and you just have to start writing the story. And that takes me to the end of my presentation today. which I hope you found helpful. And I'm gonna hand over to Ray